Hey, so this is Sailing Anarchy, live from the Volvo Ocean Race in Boston. We have the privilege of speaking with Ian Walker today. Ian's the skipper of Green Dragon. Now, Ian, you're best known as a small boat sailor, two-time medalist in the 470 class in the America's Cup. What made you wake up one morning and decide to go bashing around the world in a Volvo 70?
Got the Irish music as well in the background for you. I really got involved through the project. I mean, my business partner and I had the idea of trying to bring the race to Galway when Volvo were looking for stopovers. So our main thrust was to try and get the race to Galway. In order to do that for Volvo at the time, they wanted to have a boat in the race, or they, it was part of the conditions to have a boat in the race. So we managed to get government funding for the stopover in Galway, but raising the money for a boat in the race was a whole different kettle of fish. And so it's been an ongoing process to try and do that. In fact, when we started out putting the team together, I was trying to I actually asked 3 other people to skip on the boat. It wasn't my original intention, but as we went on, and I kind of got more into the idea, and then it became pretty apparent that I was going to have to pick up the ball and run with it. This is alright with this music.
So you actually got shanghaied into sailing the boat, is what you're saying?
I would just say that it became increasingly apparent that instead of talking to everything about it and trying to work on the whole thing, what I actually needed to do was lead the whole thing, and that's what it needed. We couldn't sell the thing without having a leader, and I couldn't get a leader without having the money to do it. So I basically, it needed someone to commit to it, and so I decided that that's what I should do.
Right. So you guys have got a pretty decent reputation of having a bunch of sailors on board that truly like each other and having a good time, but on a 40-day leg, like the leg up to Rio, how soon after the start do you run out of things to talk about? How do you keep it interesting on board?
I'm constantly amazed at the drivel everybody comes out with. I'm constantly amazed that the same guys on the same watch are still talking to each other after whatever it is now, 100 days sailing. And we have an intercom system on the boat, so quite often I'm sat in the nav station and I can hear on the speaker what they're talking about. And you can imagine what most of what they're talking about is all about. But it's I think we are telling the stories for the 5th or 6th time now.
So what's the best joke you've heard so far?
The best joke's probably too dirty to tell on tell on video. I think it's more stories than jokes. But you know what it's like. What stays on the boat? What goes on the boat stays on the boat.
So you've been involved in 2 America's Cup campaigns. You started off with Team GBR, and then you sailed with Team 39 the last time. Can the America's Cup be saved in its current situation, or does something fundamental need to change?
You know, I'm part of the school that actually thinks that the America's Cup will always be like this, and it's sort of part of it. It goes through these cycles. Much as I'm disappointed to see it, because so many of my friends and so many of my people I work with, depend on the America's Cup, and companies we deal with day in day out. It's going to have a huge effect on our industry. So nobody wants to see the current sort of standoff. But then if you look back over time, it is kind of the history of the event. So. It's one of the reasons why the America's Cup is talked about so much. I personally am quite excited about seeing these 2 massive catamarans or trimarans, whatever they are, racing against each other. But I mean, that won't be sustainable in the long run. And I guess the America's Cup, like Formula One and like the process Volvo are going through, are going to have to go through some sort of cost reduction thing in order to have the number of teams they require to make it commercially viable. There's a whole other argument that says it doesn't need to be commercially viable and it's a rich man's game and it shouldn't be, but I'm still in the school of thought that we need these things to be commercially viable, and then guys like me can be involved, and the whole industry can start growing again.
So now, being on both sides with the Volvo campaign and an America's Cup campaign, is the Volvo more commercially viable? And for a small team like the Green Dragon, what needs to be done with the Volvo to help make smaller teams more competitive in the next Volvo race?
I think that there's 2 main issues. I think one is the cost to be able to be competitive. By competitive, I mean you're able to get in the top 3 regularly. So you're not necessarily going to win, but you're going to be competitive. And I think that's what you need to be able to sell to a sponsor, and that needs to come down. The cost of doing that needs to come down to a level more like the level of money that we've spent in this race. And I think that also we need to cap the spending of the higher spending teams, so that the race isn't won before the start, so everybody actually has a chance. So it increases the accessibility and also reduces the overall cost, so you can actually sell it to sponsors easier.
So now the entire country of Ireland will probably erupt into a riot if you guys are on the podium going into Galway. What do you need to do to make that happen?
Well, I mean, there's only so much we can do. We've got to. It's like any other race, you know. We've got to. Whatever happens, we've got to keep fighting, and we've got to. You know, there will be an opportunity, I'm sure, at some point. We've got to make sure if the door's open that we burst through it. But otherwise, it's like everything else. We've got to just extract the last tenth of boat speed, 24 hours a day. Make sure we make good sail decisions, and I guess there's always a lot of pressure on the navigator and skipper to go the right way. But you know, the odds aren't in our favour. But sometimes that can lead to opportunity. There's a bit less pressure on us in some respects in terms of the overall points of the whole race. We certainly don't need to worry about what everybody else is doing.
So can we expect to see you take a flyer at some point? Is that what you're saying?
We have a policy on board that we don't take flyers just for the sake of taking a flyer. I mean, 8 to 9 times out of 10, these guys are the best skippers and navigators in the world. They're going to go the right way. So we've got to try and find the 1 or 2 opportunities where they go the wrong way, like when the feet all went the wrong way off of Fiji and New Zealand. You know, that was an opportunity that was there to be taken. And if something like that happens again, we've got to be ready to take it.
All right, and one last thing here. You have a tremendous amount of Olympic experience in the 470 class. When you look at where the Olympics is going for 2012, especially coming to London, are the Olympics going the right way, taking the Tornado class out and ignoring the overwhelming response of the sailors that said they'd much rather sail the 29er than the 470 in the women's event?
Personally, I think they're not going the right way. I wouldn't have match racing, at least women's match racing in the Olympics, without being too sexist. I don't think the number of people who match race women's match racing worldwide, I'm not sure what the number is, but I imagine it's much fewer than the number of people who sail catamarans worldwide. I'm not as close to it as I used to be, but I think everybody recognises, even ISAF recognised that you need to take a longer term view and you need to plan properly, and you know, the youth classes need to reflect the Olympic classes, and it's not just something you can take a snapshot decision every 4 years. You know, and the voting process is very constrained or restricted. The voting process probably doesn't lead to the best long-term development of the sport, and I think that's something that ISAF need to look at.
Do you think the Olympics are too concerned about TV with the medal race format and some of the other things that they've tried to do to make it more exciting to a TV audience?
Well, you know, TV's the paymaster long-term, and I was quite against the medal format, but I think as long as the medal format doesn't stop the best guys from winning, as long as it doesn't just become a lottery on one race, then I'm kind of happy that it. You know, and I think that the original thing they did with double points and everyone sailing didn't really work. It was too much change on the last race, and now I think it's quite a nice balance. If someone like Ben Ainsley's won 9 races, then he deserves to win the gold medal no matter where he comes in the medal race. But it's also quite good if it's quite close, like the star race last time, that you can have a load of change on the last race. So I actually think the balance is probably quite good at the moment.
Good. And what are your plans after the Volvo?
Have a nice holiday. I mean, this is going to take a bit of time, you know, mentally and physically to sort of get over. There's always a lot of work as well, wrapping up the program, and you know, one would hope that you'd find a way to move the program on into another race, but you know, that's all about raising money and getting investors. And that's why we work so hard with the Green Dragon to try and promote what we're doing and promote the sport and try and remain accessible as a team, and hopefully Galway will go a long way in Ireland to raise the profile of sailing. So that's our big target right now. Well,
and I think you've seen in Boston that Green Dragon seems to be the sentimental favourite. Even if Puma's the home team, there's plenty of support for the Green Dragon here.
You know, we're very grateful for all the support. And I'm lucky enough to get copied in on nearly all the emails of people who make time to write to us to show how much enjoyment they're getting from following the race or supporting us, and you know, every one of them gets read, and it's a big boost to the team, particularly if I get them when I'm on board.
Fantastic. All right, well, thank you very much for your time. We hope to see you on the podium here in the next few legs, and again, this is Sailing Anarchy with Ian Walker.
Thanks, we're doing our best.